Welcome to the Quintessential Listening Poetry Online Radio and YouTube Podcast, streamed live from the heart of Washington, D.C. Here, you'll find a portal to vibrant voices, echoing souls, and an ongoing celebration of the extraordinary power of language. So, prepare yourself to join host Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram and his special guests as they explore traditional and spoken word forms of poetry.
Hello, everyone. Recently, I had the incredible opportunity to welcome the distinguished poet, David Leo Sirois, back to the podcast. David is a phenomenal Canadian-American poet whose work has been published 153 times across 26 countries and translated into 13 languages. He's the brilliant host of Spoken Word Online and the author of the captivating poetry collection Humbledoves, Poems to Pigeons and Plants. His talent also earned him third prize in winning writers Wergle Flomp Humor Poetry Contest and accolades from the Fertile Brains organization for his remarkable contributions to world literature. David's passion for poetry extends to teaching for the Bombay Review and the Poetry Academy. Beyond poetry, he is also a gifted singer-songwriter, radio DJ, and actor. Our conversation was inspiring, humorous, and insightful.
I opened the interview with the following question. David, what inspired your amazing poetry collection, Humbledove, Poems to Pigeons and Plants?
I was living in Paris at the time, and my eye is always attuned toward, animals wherever I might see them, on the street, etc., in parks. And I started seeing anomalies in the pigeon kingdom where I saw my first all-white pigeon. And then on another occasion, I saw an all-brown pigeon. And these are things I had never seen before. So I started writing just amusing little vignettes to pigeons. And that was the genesis of it, seeing them in a new way and then helping me write about the world through the lens of driving pigeons.
What did it symbolize for you?
It was just the most unusual thing I had ever seen. I didn't even know that there were pigeons that were colored like a dove. The book is called Humbledoves because, a pigeon is kind of a humbler version of a dove. But to see a completely white pigeon, just shimmering in a little park, it caught my eye so much that I started describing not only the bird, but, the child that was running after it and his childminder, etc. And so it became a whole kind of culture of looking into Paris through that point of view. And so these birds are fashion conscious. They're vain. They experience love. I got so interested in writing about them that I would be doing an open mic or some other reading, and I would start out with a poem to a pigeon, which would get people laughing and loosen them up, and then I'd hit them with the more serious existential poetry. So it ended up working out really well in terms of connecting with the audience.
The book cover, simple, minimalist. Were you able to authentically represent what you wanted with the cover?
With the cover, yes, indeed. I wish I had a copy close by, but for the people that are watching or listening and can't see it, it's a very simple line drawing of a pigeon. It might just be 2 or 3 lines stenciled out, but it suggests the bird really well. And I was married at the time, and my wife, is a painter, and she draws as well and does watercolor, things like that. And as I started to, come up with more and more poems to pigeons, started drawing them. And, we saw several different iterations of that design that she was making. And there was one that was so simple and yet so great in that it kind of had a heart shape to it while being just the very simple 2 or 3 lines mimicking the shape of a bird. So she called it Heart Pigeon, and it completely and perfectly encapsulated my my book idea, because the book itself, these poems are very minimalistic. There's just a few lines, some of them. And so it was a minimalistic drawing to go with minimalistic poetry. And my heart is really in the, compassionating with the animal kingdom and seeing pigeons. I've always seen them as an adorable kind of cute, or something to be celebrated kind of animal. And so when I would hear people say that pigeons are rats with wings, or they're the vermin of the sky, it would always bother me. And so I naturally was just celebrating them, and I realized that it gives a simple other view of nature, of a part of nature that, if I was to write a book to back, for example, a part of nature that people don't normally romanticize or have cute feelings about, a sense of their adorability. So it made perfect sense to have that simple cover with the simple poems, although there's a lot, behind the poems itself. There might be a simple surface, but there's a lot of psychology and spirituality and things like that, just in my writing in general.
Right. Thank you. Which brings up the next question. The predominant theme in the book. What did you write about? Tell us more.
I think that essentially the book is about the human ego, making fun of ourselves as human beings. And so if I'm describing, a poem as wearing a smart gray suit, or that, as in the poem you'll hear later about a brown pigeon, that she's, refusing to wear the common colors of pigeons, and she has her own style. And so there's a kind of a vanity to it, which goes with the, fashion side of Paris. It's about the look. And yet there are other poems that might make fun of people's way of describing themselves on a internet dating site, for example. But I cast the criticism in the form of a pigeon, just to, poke a little fun at people through a different lens, through a character. My serious poetry is really about enlightenment and, who we are, what we're doing on Earth, why we're alive. And so the flip side, of course, to any study of my spirituality and enlightenment is understanding the human ego. So I'll start with a couple of poems from the book and then read some lines from Dreams. Humbledoves. I saw children chasing pigeons at a playground in Montmartre. As I walked by, I stared and grew. They didn't notice me or my hair in disrepair, but I did stare in mute contemplation of their humble, fearless, unrelenting effort to scare these multicolored humbledoves who come from everywhere. And this is one called Pigeon Convention. The State of Automatic Temperature Regulation in Select European Marketplaces Conference culminated with a big shebang gathering, feathered, displaying welcome, whole baguette, blessed sidewalk. Never again would birdsong be the same. In this metropolitan wonderland of man-made parks and wild concrete, Porte de Versailles convention organizers and catering corps complained that these birds could be so finicky as to refuse fresh madeleine. The streets were sweetened with continuous cooing, beak-to-beak encounters, small discussion clusters. The air was all a chatter, and the pavement a patter. Nothing mattered more than fallen crumbs. So I'm going to read 33 of my micropoems from Dreams, and I'll just preface that by saying that I'm heading towards 400 pages worth of poems and short lines that I've written down verbatim from my dreams. And so the 3-volume set that I'm making is 3 volumes of 33 chapters with 33 micropoems in each chapter. So anyhow, it's at least 350 pages so far. Now I'm going to share the screen for this because some of them are so short, one might miss them if I just read them without giving a little bit of a. Okay, and the first publication to put some of these out was the Bombay Review. A flashing forth of stars, and it all began. Stars, check, what die? Are there any other meanings for sublime? What blows your mind is mighty fine. Yes, that's what happens when you hide behind a stone. Your limited offering is gone in the morning. My long-lost lover is in my soul. Your illusions, too, you draw from the sacred place. What will unfold, what takes shape before us, that which will come to us, is not to be guessed. It connects to the floor, but you could lay it on the moon. That's what intelligence would say. We need to talk to each other. It's okay. I get it all the time. Artists are often mistaken for creative powers. The town gave us the honor of oblivion. The magic went by, and over the years, it got stronger. I don't know anyone else who's veering back toward human interaction. Where with COVID, I guess I'm too happy now. I stayed to watch one life. He ran across the street to find himself. She's changing face every day. Just a little coffee in a paper cup with a few sweet words. Color it as you like. It's beautiful, but there's no rainbow, no island, no hunger, no rescue. We assembled all the night notes, removed the moonlight, and there is nothing now blocking this day. It's a perfect game, the capture, like a reality. Embrace the quiet. Let it touch your ear. It's hard to see, but it's the one way free. So I traveled in time. I opened the door, the easiest way of crossing the floor. Of the poet, 9 out of 10 are gone. What remains is their song. In our fictitious tents, we are camped out here in the field of meaning. That's the blue card I was given in my dream. Here's some complimentary modesty. You seem a long way off yourself. Her name was drawn from nothingness and wears a silence as its dress. You'll need pain and art to truly learn and show you where skyscrapers really come from. It strikes me that justice, 19 years after the fact, being born. His lover was donated to him by science. Love is the last and first thing. His letter to the editor, simple type. And we're back.
David, and those are from your dreams.
Yes, indeed, indeed.
All quite profound.
Well, I'm very fortunate that because I kind of deal with poetry all day, whether I'm making a remark on the radio or posting spoken word online or writing or revising or submitting poetry, it gets kind of into the subconscious and into the back of my thinking process. And I also inhale large amounts of poetry as well as spiritual teaching. So all day I might be reading this quote from Eckhart Tolle, and then that quote from my guru from India, another quote from Sri Ravi Shankar, et cetera, et cetera. And so all of these bits of wisdom are going into my head all day long, and I'm contemplating them. I read spiritual teachings like the Shiva Sutras, which a lot of the Shiva Sutras are just a line or a couple lines. And so all of that goes into me. And then I guess in my dream life, it has to express itself. And I have the rare gift of receiving, not writing, but receiving a poem that does not have the element of trying. So I didn't work and rework these lines. I'm not trying to give a nod of the head to this or that kind of audience. I'm not giving an allusion to a poet on purpose, but I might be alluding to somebody. Some of them seem to relate to Rumi and Frank Bedard and other poets.
Yes.
So I'm very fortunate to kind of be a reader in myself and have to just pay attention and write exactly what comes to mind right when I wake up. And it happens so often that whatever voice is dictating to me, and it's been happening since I was 6 years old, I've always seen it as God. Whatever source that is must have liked the fact that I'm consciously compiling, notating, getting every single word as I heard it in a dream over time and time and time. And now that there's thousands of dream lines, maybe it's because I actually do live. I'm getting more of them. It's a very fortunate thing.
So when did you start writing them down? When did you decide what I'm going to do?
Okay. Well, from the age of 6 up until 3 or 4 years ago, I had maybe a handful of these lines from dreams. For example, when I was 6, the first one I heard was, it was kind of a mummy transmitting a thought to me. And so I heard it in my head saying, "Your life is just one dream that I am having. I have dreamt many lives for you." And, another one also when I was 6 about having to choose one of my senses to lose, which one would it be? And so time went on, and these were so rare that maybe in the span of, between 6 years old and 2020, there were less than 10 of them. But when I really started paying attention to them, well, firstly, I had a roommate that took her life in the apartment where I lived. And I saw her once in a dream come to me and jokingly say, "Do you mind living in a haunted house?" And so I started, really getting interested in these and making sure I caught every one, because it seemed like there was some profound meaning behind each one of them. So much so that I never have allowed myself to to revise them. So these are exactly as they came in the dream, and I felt like I had to capture them exactly as they were and capture them in general, because I was being given so much in this inner life that I thought it was valuable to share with others.
What has the reception been so far?
Amazing. As I said, the Bombay Review printed the first bunch of them in 2020 or the first day of 2021, because I had really started getting a bunch of them. And so I had almost 30 by the end of 2020. And when I had submitted them to the Bombay Review, they published those. And since then, the lines have been published in, I don't know, at least 4 languages in at least 5 countries. And when I share them in readings, people comment about them always in the chat, or come to me later and say, "Oh, this one about," and it's never the ones that I found important. Like, maybe 25 years ago, I heard somebody in my dream say, being so good, being so good, being so good. The same 3 words with just a different emphasis. And 2 different people have said that one meant so much to them. So anyway, I never know which ones are going to strike a chord with people, but they've become so embraced and known that now I'm going to be trying to serialize them, like 33 at a time, in a magazine that really loved them, and encouraging people to translate them. That they've been translated into French, Romanian, and Czech. Why not even more? And shared, on national and multinational programs as those translations. So I'm just amazed by the absolutely phenomenally strong response. And it ends up now that I write most of my work in my dream, because I might only consciously make time and write a poem or get an inspiration and actually have time to follow it all the way through, maybe 2 or 3 times in a month, or even 6 times in a year, 10 times in a year, write an actual new poem. But in falling asleep, there was one night where 39 times I fell asleep and then immediately woke up with another line or micropoem in my mind. And so when I share these, there are so many of them that every week at my, at SpokenWord Paris, being held online, at Spoken World Online, I'm able to share, at least I share 33 a week generally, and don't have any other new poems to share. But people are, as I said, quoting them back to me and just stunned, and their reactions are so off the charts that I'm really amazed.
Are you surprised sometimes that what comes out is delivered to you? Those words, those lines?
Oh yeah. No, there have been times where I found the lines that came out hilarious or so deep that it was a little scary, or just so ingenious that I never would have thought about it while I was awake. One of the first lines I ever got, and this is maybe 20 or more years ago, was just this one line: "He threw a window at the sun." So that's everybody's favorite for some reason. Well, maybe an obvious reason. It's mind-boggling in a sense. He threw a window at the sun, but it seems to say so much in terms of inner illumination and our relationship to nature, whatever way you might choose to apply any of these. They seem to all have something to say. And so, if I'm one night I was writing down one after another that had to do with consciousness, starting out with maybe like conscious is the sound that wants to murmur all along, the tone in every song, something like that. And so 5 or 6 of these came out, and then one of them arrived where it said, consciousness is cool. And in the dream I asked, is that a joke? And I heard back, a joke from the home office. It certainly makes me laugh to hear about the joke from the home office.
In your dreams, you're actively involved in the process. You're there in it.
Most of them come though as a kind of a voiceover. I'm not speaking to anyone, and I'm not speaking. No, I mean, I'm not listening to or speaking to anyone, but I'll be, in a certain environment, a certain place, and I'll hear a line, and that's what I'll write down when I wake up. So it's not often that it does come through a conversation in a dream, but occasionally, and it's occasionally an actual person telling me in the dream, but usually it's a voiceover, like just completely out of nowhere. A big booming voice in the sky.
Were you able to reflect these lines in Humbledoves?
The Humbledoves book came out in 2020, and all of these started to be published afterward. And so when I was writing all those poems in Paris in, between 2011 and 2017, when I was there, I wasn't in the habit of dreaming any lines whatsoever. So they're unrelated, but it makes sense because most of my comedic poetry is just so far from what I write about seriously or so off the chart in terms of ridiculousness, like some of the pigeon lines that maybe they don't really, not in the same camp.
So you view Humbledoves as being more comedic, where your lines are more philosophical and profound in terms of their work. There is a different level of focus behind the line, correct?
Absolutely. There's usually a seriousness to the lines that I get in dreams, even the briefer, like one of them is simply, the last mask is you. Because if I took off all of my psychological masks, for example, or any physical one, the last mask would be me, my face. And once after that's gone, the last mask is you. So anyhow, they all kind of hit me in a very deep way and generally are serious in nature. I have a longer poem, about 2.5 pages long. I will share my screen again, and thank you so much for allowing such a thing. So here we go. The Song of Solitude Community. One light and dark sky hovered everywhere, the halo, holy places and decrepit alike, under crown jewel constellations scattered over the community of humanity, magnanimous kindness of quiet stars, for all global locals connected by a web. Anonymous earth dwellers, monks, merchants, medics, married lovers who make time to dovetail their own fingers in solitary prayer that paint the air red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I fell in love, the silence of the soul that brings warm human intuition and reason to their knees in the never-doomed, domed temple of midnight Paris, Prague, Istanbul, Mumbai, Rio, Boston, Montreal, and all cities, towns, villages on the omnipresent ground. Stage of the spoken world, changing face of earth. One light and dark sky hovers everywhere and pierces countless hearts of artists, open-minded midnight makers of scriptures, sculptures, pictures, symphonies that symbolize all human longing, feeling, seeking, wanting, prophesying the coming of greater inspiration still. In the company of saints and abundant, undaunted light, the well that gives to all is never empty, but forever replenished and replete with complete knowledge that slakes our thirst for light. We are waves of one unbounded sea of spirit electricity. I whispered into the well of the heart, met by minor echoes, resonant of a temporary rarity, contemporary sincerity, passionate search for the blue pearl in the private sky of the mind, sacred jewel, summit of the spirit, culmination of all meditation that holds the whole cosmos illumined in its contemplation, being conscious bliss. I sang into the listening air of midnight melodic prayers and murmurs of discouragement that disappeared in a sequence of seconds, but were stored in the sacred record. Everything ever said, sung, murmured, whispered, or simply held in the mind for one minute minute. I wanted to howl, but softly sang raw, off-key questions that dissolved in sunlight, breakfast, chants, and meditation, followed by phone calls to pharmacies and family, plus electronic threads with prospective employers, while walled and windowed into snowstorm northern Maine morning, happily writing for nothing, obsessed with nothingness, and from time to time looking for a living. Under the crested waves of frigid winds which populate the sky with pale crystals, I fell in love with the silence of the soul, though all night I intoned the echoed wisdom of weather from a radio speaker that repeated what I said into a lonely microphone tethered to towers that scattered my words to 500,000 satellite dish ears, tuned into practical prophecies for the closest tenants of the planet. Hello, fellow citizens of the world. There is poetry opening everywhere, myriad eyelids, panoramic vision that begins with the bandwidth of our own outlook. As always, the voice appears in dreams and spills spirit secrets that do not dissolve in daylight. Love helps all the work get done. It's a virtual heaven with a sudden survive. God is the only thing that's real and holds the whole dream. Just a jolt would change everything. A little bit of lightning, all you need. Light is might. He threw a window at the sun. Our global, open, secret God in multicolored, many-splendored solitude wears this world to clothe naked light in nature, weather, time, sky, and mind. Hard to see what is behind our eyes. There is light behind the mind, whose only words forever are, I am, I am, I am. Thank you so much.
All right. What a wonderful work. Give me some of the lines that you were most proud of writing, and or lines that you felt most challenged to write.
So this line, I wanted to howl, softly saying raw, off-key questions. So I'm very proud of this, partially because in one line, I'm alluding to two different poets already, to Allen Ginsberg and to Rainer Maria Rilke. So I wanted to howl for it, but softly saying raw, off-key questions. So as Rilke described in Letters to a Young Poet, that we have to live the question raw. So here's some raw, off-key questions. I'm very proud of how I gathered together all of that in the span of one line. And I suppose it was challenging, and then there are other parts that I'm not sure still, and I'll be revising it till I pass away.
All right.
As I translated Valerie, and Valerie said, a poem is never finished, only abandoned.
Right.
So, when I talk about a temporary rarity, contemporary sincerity. So this really troubles me in the sense of like, is this sing-song? Is it bad? Is it dumb? And the first few minutes of our first interview, my first time on the show, you said that and I was just on the phone or, on audio, and you said there was such a sincerity in my voice that you said you could tell that everything I said, I truly meant, and that it was absolute, that I was putting my whole being behind it. So I like that I'm giving a nod of the head to that, I do value that contemporary rarity of sincerity, but it sounds kind of, I don't know, sing-songy, or, so there are things I may never like about the poem, and I'll keep tinkering with it. And other parts I love, like I fell in love with the silence of the soul. And so, one can hear the influence of maybe Rumi or Mirabai, other poet saints. That's all in that word.
How did you go about organizing the poems?
Okay. Well, I should say that although the title is Humbledoves, it's poems to pigeons and plants. And so
Right.
I had started writing poems to plants when I lived in Boston. It was 2007, and I was temporarily unemployed, or as I would probably have said at the time, I'm a full-time writer. No matter how I might have addressed that fact, I had spare time. And so I started writing poems, for example, to a plant I had that died and then came back to life again, in a sense, because it had become gnarled brown branch, losing all of its flowers, etc. And then months later, it seemed, these little white flowers started to come out of it. So I started with that one, to a plant stranded on the fire escape, I think is the name of that poem. And then I started writing more. I wrote a poem to a Gerber daisy in a glass after having kept it and put it into a champagne flute. And then over time, over the span of a week, the liquid in the champagne flute went all white, and I don't know what I started to grow there, but it became, it discolored the water, and the flowers started to wilt, etc. So I wrote this poem directly addressing the Gerber daisy, and then with the revelation at the end of I'm going to die, like reflecting on myself at the very end after I'm putting the week-old bloom into the trash. I'm going to die.
Wow. Please share some more of your work.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to read maybe my favorite pigeon poem from Humbledoves, and then I've got something else I may end up sharing the screen for, but I'll start with this. So it's called The Secret Pigeons Ball. Of all the unbidden pigeons in this half-hidden park, Dave's fave is different. She refuses to wear their scarf of blue and green tradition. She models the color coffee ice cream. Free to be alone and unbothered, singing crooning tones of cool. She knows she's odd, dressed up for some private event, secret pigeons ball, where several colors of feeling might merge and mingle into brown, like Play-Doh in my 8-year-old hand. When I nabbed the new year in my mind, tall gold neon 1979 sign, and got into time's toy train to race faster, ever faster, into Paris proper, where in an overlooked park, a smart, illiterate pigeon, quite quiet, unaware of my stare, washed her long wing feathers in a fountain of sunshine. The essence of fashion is feeling good looking.
When you write, who's in the driver's seat? You or the poem? Who's in the driver's seat? Who's driving?
Okay. The poem is certainly in the driver's seat.
Okay.
And, because I never know when I start writing it where it's going to end up. And
Okay.
I've heard quotes about that before that, if you know how a poem is going to end, when you start writing it, it's going to be a mediocre poem.
Oh,
It does help
Okay.
it's an organic process that develops on the page. And, Paul Valéry said something like, the gods give us a first line, perhaps, and we have to create the tree like a fruit, that's fallen to the ground, and we have to create the tree that it would have fallen from. But even in doing that, you're not gonna turn out the way you thought it would when you started it. But anyhow, in the next poem, I treat on a similar subject where I'm in a way taking dictation, but I'm describing, how it happened, and you'll hear from what it's about being a channel. It's called Gift of the Ghost. David, I am the unknown soul, simply called the ghost, who makes your mouth move, holds the strings of your marionette limbs, keeps vigil, threshold of speech, the tip of silence's tongue. I paint paper with indigo ink and wish to share blessings of an eloquence you cannot attain alone. I have returned to you from Rue de Boulanger and Apollinaire's customary path over Pont-Mirabeau, where I so often haunted you, grasped at the nape of your neck, almost halted your steps home, as you nourished your notepad with each phrase I fed you. You allow me to cover your shoulders again like a long and weighty woolen overcoat and prickle your skin with sparks of spirit electricity. Paul Valéry, your guide, said he'd rather write a bad poem while conscious than a great poem in a trance. You welcome the chance to let your lips move without your volition and take the other stance. Stand with both feet firmly grounded in light. Keep going, river forward with full faith in the great power, puppeteer of all people, plants, animals, water, and every last lost poet who longs to write no longer, but instead read aloud words inscribed on the heart of God, rather than trade the shady coin of the spoken world. Flow with the ghost who draws your mind toward it. Allow the mind to glimpse luminescent, lit arrow shot from the still space between your brows. Waters roiled no longer. Your muddy thoughts have settled at the bottom of this life-conscious lake. Align your will with divine direction. Let these phrases pour over the vacant patience page, strong waterfall of script that ignores where lines stand on ruled sheets and takes shape over the entire silent paper path. Language that looks for light, the blackbird's last outburst on a twilight branch. Cut the chords to your form. Soft-skinned marionette, I can choreograph with grace. Make your hesitant steps more sure-footed on the stage of the written world. Let countless sour apples fall from your branches and ferment on damp grass. Let the wind gesture prayers in the emerald sheath of your leaves, dotted with drizzle. God is the speaker and the seer inside you. The rest is written on my hands, but only the ghost can understand. Thank you.
Are you hoping that your book, Humbledoves, resonates with a broad range of readers, a specific audience?
I hope to reach as many people as I can, because, even if there's a poem in that book called The Tasteland, where I allude to at least 4 different Eliot poems, I'm not going for like the erudite reader who's going to get every reference, like, oh, that's referring to Ash Wednesday right there. But I'm going for anybody, from people who love poetry and might get the references, to people who, I don't tend to like poetry, but that pigeon thing is kind of funny.
Right.
It's going for as broad a range of people as possible.
What is it about Paul Valéry? You talked about him. His name was in the poem itself. Tell me more.
When I first was introduced to Paul Valéry's long poem, Le Cimetière, the Cemetery by the Sea, which I translated and the translations published, it just seems so broad and so powerful and so all-encompassing that I even still feel like everything is in that 6-page poem. And it may or may not be true, but when I, first started encountering that poem, I thought, I think I was Paul Valéry in a past life. Which, of course, you nor I or any detective could prove. But I feel such a connection with his ideas and choices and inspiration. I'll read 2 poems. It's called To a Flower I Have Named. I call these blossoms bells of time. They often dress in pink, though some are white as these and wear an air of sudden joy. Their cone-shaped core trumpet live triumph. Tight buds, introverted green globes with clocks inside that count down to brittle petals. In a word, moribund. I see the sacred memento mori. My mind unwinds while pale flowers stare at me, pupils beige and scarlet hearts, forever present mystery. Soul is simple as theirs, but wears the sour sweat of aged regret. From dust to dust, nothing is lost, but let's give space between some warm meaning. I guess not all the poems in that book are comedic. I'm going to share the most recent thing that I've shared here. a poem called The Tree of Keys. I'll skip this one to a flower I've named I just read. Okay, The Tree of Keys. The friendship of the mind, the realization. So, my message for 2023 is my spiritual teacher. Be your own best friend. Friends, even pain is perfect. Not a flaw, but a call to wholeness. In my room, I learn to live and love and lose only important things. Passport, phone, keys, and joy. I meditate to dwell in realms of calm or witness calamities, thought and nonsense. My other mother, world teacher, said that meditation is whatever happens when you sit down to meditate. I imbibe illimitable light and let my shortcomings starve and die. When I devote daily discipline to chant and meditation, the only thing that suffers is my suffering. In a split-second dream, I hear, this is wholeness, and I am being absorbed by it. In the dark garden of the heart, I attempt to cultivate sturdy, steady stems of joy, dressed as dandelions with crowns of fire, beloved weed, better than finer flowers, plus one good thought on which to cling and sing within me, my mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, sound body of God, breathe for the first flock. Among golden weeds, I push a sacred seed into soil. My teacher gave me in a dream, as she said, the tree capable of holding its own voice. I wish to plant that wish-fulfilling tree, which grows gold and silver keys, openers of the inner door. It has never been forbidden to touch and take from the tree of keys. In another indelible dream, I hear the night then darkly shadowy. Dawn, often the name of literature. Softest quality of dawn is God's rose gold solitude, which wears the wide world as coat, reef, and glass and stone, adorned by songs of birds, all of which mean, I'm alive, still alive. I made it through the night. Friends, you hold the keys to the boundless and borderless kingdom, the inner window land where the soul of your soul sings softly. Come with me into fall field. Let's pluck a gigantic basket of spirit keys and find out where to find a friendship with our minds. Study our inner self, the light in which no trace pain exists. Thank you so very much. And we're back.
So much has happened in the world since 2020. And if you think about your creative journey with this book, personal discoveries did you make about yourself writing the book, and where are you now in terms of these discoveries 4 years later?
While writing the book, I realized that I can make, while writing and sharing aloud from the book, I realized that I can make serious people laugh. I could make comments about life that were hidden in a comedic style. There are even lines that might flash out of the book like, patience is the god of change. And people have quoted that back to me before. It's like, wow, this is so deep. I learned to find ways, in a sense, to put serious things in a funny light. I started writing a book that I call The Pigeon, a book that subtitle was A Field Guide to the Pigeons of South West, New England. Actually, pigeons are different anywhere than anywhere else. So I'm already playing with like these different ideas to write more about pigeons. And that book idea is like about actual pigeons with names and characters.
I had never really thought about pigeons in a positive way, but your last statement about a pigeon reminded me when I was 21, maybe I was 19, I don't know. I was in school, in undergraduate school, and had purchased a new, and I was walking across campus thinking I was really looking good with my new cap on, and a pigeon on the.
Oh my Lord!
Of course, I didn't know it until people pointed this. So I've had a very hard time with pigeons since then. After tonight, you listen to your work. I will give them another chance. I suppose that was 40 years ago,
great.
But I was traumatized.
I can totally relate.
The pigeon ruined it. Okay, but that's enough of that. They were working readers. Purchase your book. Where can we find it?
Well, it's a book that, while my 5 serious manuscripts, one of them is a children's book, I keep sending around to contests and they keep getting rejected. So this one I decided to self-publish, which is a journey in itself, if anyone is a writer out there. And so I decided to do that, to at least have something out there so that, while I was getting my other stuff into the world. And so anyway, on Amazon, if one would put in the word Humbledoves, which is all one word, humble with doves, to anyone out there, or look up my name, which, from your invite or what have you. And if one Googles David Leo Sirois, you get literally 5 to 10 pages of links to my poetry and music and acting and hosting. So that's even the best way to find me, just to Google my name.
Right. Where do you head from here, poetically, creatively? What's next for you?
Well, while I'm hoping that one of my finished manuscripts lands in the right hands, the main thing that's on my mind is listening to my dream and taking great care to preserve all of those lines as they are. And aside from that, writing now inspired by those lines. So, you saw a couple of poems tonight that have dream lines in them, end up kind of fleshing out the point of what the poem is really getting at. And I can make now a group of them about anything. Someone said, okay, like write about the heart. And I'm like, okay, so these are 12 of these lines from dreams that all have heart in them. I'd like to continue being not only recording them and sharing them, but getting inspired by them and writing lines, that come off of what I dreamt. Continuing to work on that inner road.
I'd like to thank you. We've reached the end of our poetic journey, but I feel you're an incredible man. You are a gift to the universe from the Creator to share your word, to bring lightheartedness, but also to bring the seriousness that's necessary for us all to think about. I wish you nothing but the best, and I'm so glad that we've had another opportunity to talk. You've made my week.
Thank you so much. And you made mine.
You made me think about my hand. I had not thought about that yet.
Still craving poetry? Hundreds of episodes of the quintessential listening, poetry, online radio, and YouTube podcast are available to listen to or download on iTunes, Spotify, and other streaming platforms. To learn more about the popular podcast or how to become a guest, visit www.QLPOR-YT.com. Till next time, take care and let poetry ring somewhere throughout the land.